Question 12 and question 13 are pretty similar. The first one says Miss Schrader's collecting pennies. She collects X pennies into an empty jar. Each penny has the same weight. The weight in grams of the jar in pennies can be calculated using the expression 3x plus 200. What does the coefficient 3 represent in this expression? So let's just go through the answers and see what makes the most sense. 3 can be how much each penny weighs. Well, that would make sense because 3 is right next to X, and we know that X is the number of pennies. So 3 grams per penny makes sense. B says how many pennies are in the jar. It doesn't tell me anywhere that there are only 3 pennies in the jar, so it can't be B. C is how much the jar weighs. Well, if 3 is next to X in the expression, that's not going to tell me how much the jar weighs because I only have one jar, and I know that X is number of pennies in the jar. And then D is the total weight of the pennies and the jar. Well, if I have this plus 200, that's likely going to tell me what my jar weighs because you set it down, it's 200 grams. And now every time you add a penny, it's going to be an additional 3 grams on the scale. So the answer that makes sense here would have to be A, how much each penny weighs, because again, it's right next to the X, and I know X is the number of pennies. Now 13 says Aaron sells 2 types of sandwiches, sandwiches with meat and sandwiches without meat. He charges more money for sandwiches with meat than he does for sandwiches without meat. The amount of money in dollars that he earns from selling X sandwiches of one type and Y sandwiches of the other type is modeled by the expression 4X plus 3Y. Now, every other time we've seen an expression, we know that the coefficients typically tell us something about how much each item costs. Just like when we went up here with the water bottles and the Grippos bags, the coefficients told us how much money he sells each item for. So $4 and $3 are going to be how much he sells the sandwiches for. Okay, awesome. And I know that the $4 here is going to be the sandwiches with meat because it says he charges more for sandwiches with meat. And $3 is going to be sandwiches without meat because he charges less for sandwiches without meat. Now my question is, what does the variable X represent in the situation? Well, I know X tells me something about the sandwiches with meat because it's with the higher price point. $4 is more than $3. And it's not going to be how much he charges per sandwich with meat because that's $4. It's going to have to be how many sandwiches with meat he sells. So C is your answer. How many sandwiches with meat he sells.